The stream. Must-see TV shows throughout the ages.
What if I told you that one of the most successful media franchises in history started as a commercial failure?
A show that was canceled after just 3 seasons due to mediocre ratings.
Exactly. We're talking about a show that, by all conventional 1960s television metrics, did not succeed. It had a difficult production, network interference, and was constantly on the verge of being axed.
And yet, by 1986, nearly 2 decades after its cancellation, reruns of that same show were the #1 syndicated program in America.
It's an unbelievable trajectory, from a Nielsen ratings disappointment to a multi-billion-dollar empire with over 20 spin-offs, 14 films, and a cultural footprint that is simply staggering.
This is the story of Star Trek.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
It's a story not just about a TV show, but about how an idea can be bigger than its initial container, and how a vision, once unleashed, can find its audience and change the world, even after the network gives up on it.
It all starts with one of the great high-concept pitches of all time. Gene Roddenberry, the creator, described his idea as wagon train to the stars.
For audiences back then, that was the perfect framing. Wagon Train was a hugely popular Western, so this was a frontier story. But the frontier was space. The covered wagons were starships.
And the studio that took a bet on this futuristic Western? Desilu Studios.
Which, as we've talked about on this show before, was the powerhouse studio built by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Their innovations with I Love Lucy, filming on high-quality stock, pioneering the 3-camera setup, and inventing the rerun basically funded their entire operation.
So the profits from Lucy's sitcom shenanigans are now bankrolling a mission to the final frontier. It's an amazing connection. Desilu produces a pilot called The Cage, and NBC, the network, hates it.
Hates it is a strong word, but they were deeply concerned. The feedback was brutal. They called it too cerebral, too intellectual, and too slow.
A network executive note basically said it required the audience to think too much instead of just enjoying themselves. The classic executive fear.
And they had specific character notes. They felt the female first officer, #1, was unbelievable. An executive apparently said, no one would believe that a woman could hold the position of second in command.
Wow, and they weren't big fans of the alien character with the pointy ears either. Some execs wanted Spock cut entirely. They just didn't get him.
So the pilot is rejected, and normally that's the end of the story. Show's dead. But in a move that almost never happens, NBC saw something in it. They recognized the potential and made the incredibly rare decision to commission a second, completely different pilot.
A do-over. They kept Spock, but brought in a new, more action-oriented captain, James T. Kirk, played by William Shatner. The new pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, had what Roddenberry called the requisite chase and a right cross to the jaw. It worked. NBC ordered the show to series for the fall of 1966. So the show gets on the air, but the problems are just beginning. The budget for season 1 was about $190,000 per episode. That sounds like a lot for the 60s, but for an ambitious sci-fi show creating new worlds every week, it was tight.
Incredibly tight. And this is where the constraints force creativity. Think about one of the most iconic pieces of Star Trek technology, the transporter. Beam me up, Scotty.
Of course.
That was a budget solution. Building a new shuttlecraft landing set every single week was prohibitively expensive and time-consuming. It was so much cheaper to create a shimmering visual effect and just have the characters appear on the planet. A production limitation becomes a franchise-defining invention.
That's brilliant. It's like necessity isn't just the mother of invention, it's the mother of world building.
Exactly. And they used this creative thinking everywhere. When they fell behind schedule and over budget due to complex special effects, Roddenberry came up with a genius plan. He wrote a 2-part episode called The Menagerie that was essentially a frame story built around almost the entire original unaired pilot, The Cage.
So they literally recycled the pilot they had already paid for and turned it into 2 new episodes, saving a fortune and getting back on schedule. That is a production masterstroke.
They were masters of the low-budget effect. One episode's alien landscape was just Christmas tree lights filmed in a basement. Another Klingon creature was apparently a boar dressed up in a costume. You do what you have to do.
But the biggest constraint wasn't always money. It was the network censors. The show wanted to tackle heavy themes of the 1960s, the Cold War, racism, the Vietnam War, but they couldn't do it directly.
So they used allegory. The Federation and the Klingon Empire were a stand-in for the US and the Soviet Union. An episode like Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, with the aliens who are black on one side of their face and white on the other, was a direct, powerful commentary on the absurdity of racism.
But even with allegory, they ran into trouble. In one episode, Kirk's original line was, "Humanity no longer needs gods." The network got nervous and forced them to change it to the much safer,
Mankind has no need for gods. We find the one quite adequate.
And of course, there was the famous interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura in Plato's Stepchildren, the first on American scripted television. They knew it would be controversial, and many local affiliates in the South refused to air it. But the fact that they fought for it and got it on the air at all was a landmark moment.
So despite all this creativity and groundbreaking television, the ratings were never great. NBC moved it to the Friday night death slot for its 3rd season, and then, after 79 episodes, it was canceled. End of story, right?
Not even close. This is where the business story gets truly fascinating. Paramount, which had acquired Desilu, pushed the show into syndication, mostly just to recoup their costs. But at the time, the conventional wisdom was that you needed at least 100 episodes for a show to succeed in syndication.
79 wasn't enough to strip it 5 nights a week without rapid repeats. It should have failed.
It should have, but 2 things happened. First, in syndication, local stations could air it whenever they wanted. Instead of 10 p.m. on a Friday, it was now on at 5 p.m. on a weekday, right when kids were getting home from school.
It found a whole new audience, an audience that had been in bed during its original run.
A massive new audience. And because it was on every single day, that audience developed an incredibly deep and passionate connection to the characters and the world. The show became a daily ritual for millions.
And that daily exposure, that repetition, allowed the deeper themes to sink in. You weren't just watching a Monster of the Week show, you were absorbing a philosophy.
That's the first piece. The second piece is an external event. In 1977, Star Wars comes out and changes everything. It proves that science fiction is not a niche genre. It's a four-quadrant blockbuster machine.
And suddenly, every studio in Hollywood is looking for their own Star Wars. And Paramount looks at their books and says, wait a minute, we own a sci-fi property with a massive, dedicated, built-in fan base that's been growing for a decade in syndication.
It was the perfect storm. The success of Star Wars greenlit Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which brought the franchise back in a huge way. That movie's success, in turn, drove even more people back to watch the original series reruns. It was a virtuous cycle.
So by 1986, A.C. Nielsen confirms it. Star Trek, the canceled show with mediocre ratings, is the #1 syndicated program in the country. It's a complete vindication that the network's original judgment was wrong. They just didn't know how to measure the audience they had. When you look back, the entire story of the original series is a battle between two competing visions for what the show should be.
On one side, you have Gene Roddenberry's vision. It was profoundly utopian. He imagined a future where humanity had overcome poverty, racism, and war. The crew of the Enterprise was the physical embodiment of that vision.
You have a black woman as the communications officer, a Japanese man at the helm, a Scotsman in engineering, and in Season 2, they add a Russian navigator at the height of the Cold War.
That casting wasn't just symbolic, it was radical. It presented a future of cooperation and unity that was a stark contrast to the nightly news in the 1960s. Roddenberry wanted to tell philosophical stories, to use sci-fi as a vehicle for social commentary.
Then, on the other side, you have the network's vision. NBC saw it as a product. They wanted an action-adventure show that would sell ads. Their notes were always pushing for more fistfights, more simple good versus evil plots.
You see this clash everywhere. Roddenberry wants a thoughtful female first officer. The network says it's not believable. Roddenberry writes a line questioning religion. The network waters it down. It's a constant tug of war.
But there was a third force in this battle, one that neither side fully anticipated: the fans.
This is maybe the most important part of the story. When rumors of cancellation started after Season 2, fans organized what was, at the time, an unprecedented letter-writing campaign.
The numbers are incredible. Over 100,000 letters flooded NBC. History.com even mentions Caltech students marching on the studio to protest. This was a new kind of power, fan engagement on a scale no one had ever seen before.
And it worked. NBC renewed the show for a third season. Now, they did cut the budget and move it to that terrible time slot, which ultimately sealed its fate. But for a moment, the fans won. They proved that a dedicated, passionate audience could be just as powerful as raw ratings numbers. It was the birth of modern fandom culture.
So here we are, approaching the 60th anniversary in 2026. The franchise that started with that failed pilot is now a pillar of popular culture. We're talking 11 successor TV series, 14 movies, a multi-billion-dollar valuation.
The cultural impact is almost impossible to overstate. NASA named its first space shuttle Enterprise because of a fan campaign. Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, later worked with NASA to recruit minority and female astronauts, directly inspired by her role.
That's incredible. The fiction literally changed the reality of the space program. And the tech inspirations are famous. The flip phone is basically a direct copy of the communicator.
And the franchise is still expanding. Paramount is planning a huge 60th anniversary celebration. There's a new live-action series, Starfleet Academy, in the works, a scripted podcast, Lego sets, even a themed cruise with William Shatner.
The dedication to preserving the history is also amazing. The Roddenberry Archive is a new mixed reality app for the Apple Vision Pro that lets you virtually tour the original sets and see the production blueprints.
It's a testament to the power of that original vision. But it also raises a question for today. The core of Star Trek was its radical optimism, its belief in a unified, progressive future. Does that vision still resonate in 2025?
That's the central tension, isn't it? The world feels a lot more complex and maybe more cynical than it did in 1966. And the franchise itself has been criticized at times for not always living up to its own progressive ideals, like its historically slow progress on LGBTQ+ representation.
Right. The challenge for Star Trek today is the same as it's always been, to be a wagon train to the stars, to explore not just outer space, but our own inner space, to hold up a mirror to our present by showing us a vision of a better future, and to ask if we still have the courage to believe in it. The 5-year mission has become a 60-year journey, and it's far from over.